Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here, and welcome to my channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And today, it is finally time, as it is far, far overdue, to talk about the Titan discs of Khaz Algar. This is going to be a very long, very in-depth video, so grab some snacks, make sure you got some water around, and I hope you guys enjoy. If you do, make sure that you leave a like on the video, please subscribe, and of course at the end, which you should stay till the very end of. There are details all the way to the end of this video. Leave a comment letting me know what you think. As we learn from the main story questline of the War Within, we find out that there is a vault accessible through the archive in Dornegal, where the keeper Arcadis, which is one of the keepers associated with the great forger Khaz Algar, one of the Titans, has imparted into this storage system some of his own thoughts and information that had been relayed to him directly from Khaz Algar. Now this is honestly insane. These discs were one of, if not my absolute favorite part of the War Within. It's accessed by collecting Titan disc fragments. So these discs are broken initially, and we put the pieces back together so that we can access them. Exactly how they were broken is a good question. Perhaps the sundering had some kind of effect on this or something along those lines, but we put the pieces back together. You get one disc per week up to a maximum of 5 discs. And through this, there is some insane revelatory information, some things that are along the lines of what I've speculated before, some visual hints, some linguistic hints. So I'm really excited to talk about that formally with you all today. Now, I really hope Blizzard does more things like this in the future, even using perhaps the kind of storytelling of the Heronir in Herondar via the Rift of Aln to kind of do a similar thing, maybe like a weekly discovery of some huge revelatory information regarding Azeroth, Eonar, maybe even Elune, things along those lines. The old gods, of course, as you know, the descriptions of the Rift of Aln sure do sound like it's going to be related to the old gods, and that's been speculated for a long time as well. So, man, I hope Blizzard, you know, continues this for a different set of information, or maybe even adds more discs in the future, because again, there's only 5 of them. I would love to see 6 or maybe even 7 of them, but I digress. Let's get into it. I'll go disc by disc, but I want you guys to keep in mind, especially from the perspective of Dagran and Brinth, that this is perspective, right? So these characters are going into this situation with limitations on what they know. Brinth, because some of her memories have literally been taken from her due to the, you know, cycles that the Earthen go through and the stripping away of those memories. Dagran, because he's young, a young historian who doesn't have the full picture. He can only go off of what he has studied regarding the historical events that have occurred in Azeroth. And honestly, even Arcadis, right? He's being given information from Khaz Algar. Who knows if he himself ever had any manipulation done to him. Unfortunately, it does turn out towards the end that things didn't look so good for Arcadis, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And then potentially even Khaz Algar himself with his understanding, as he is just a part of the Pantheon. So who knows if what Khaz Algar is conveying to Arcadis is even actually 100% accurate either. Just keep this in mind always, that especially as we analyze and look into in-universe perspectives, there are bound to be some errors or perhaps inconsistencies, and I will discuss with you what I think those are. But without any further ado, let's get into it.
The great Titan Khaz Algar, who granted me the gift of the Forge, has relayed information from the Pantheon about our purpose. To create order from the chaos of the cosmos, the Titans search the great dark beyond for the prime world soul. This world soul, the most powerful in existence, they would guide to become the greatest Titan of all. In time, they came to sense a mighty presence within the world called Azeroth. The Pantheon made their way to the nascent world soul, hoping that their search was at an end.
Amazing. It's as though Keeper Arcadis was delivering the word of the great Khaz Algar himself. These logs must be the architect's personal records of everything. I wonder how many more we can recover.
I know of Arcadis from my studies in Khaz but this world soul he speaks of? Here on Azeroth? Do you think that's what Granda Magni was hearing all those years when he was a speaker?
I am not sure what significance this might have for my people, or my purpose. But I have faith in the Titan's plan for us.
So the first disc is pretty straightforward, but already has some pretty key information that even Chronicle did not really convey to us. It was kind of hinted at in some ways in Chronicle, but not said directly. So this is a message, information, apparently sent directly from Khaz'goroth to Arcadis, where he basically tells him about the purpose of the Keepers and the purpose of the Titans, which is that the cosmos effectively existed in chaos. And when you read the early descriptions of the light and void clashing and birthing the cosmos, everything initially is broiling in a maelstrom of fire and magic. It is chaotic. So the Titans are seeking to create order from that chaos. And in order to do that, they are searching for something called the Prime World Soul. Now, this could very well be rooted in things like Transformers or inspired by Transformers with Primus and Unicron, but ultimately, they're looking for this extremely important world soul. Now, could she be the first world soul? Very, very likely. Could she be the most powerful world soul? Very likely. This is what they believe. Could she be the most important world soul? Yeah, probably. And the question that begins to arise from the next line is Azeroth's world soul destined to be a Titan? Are world souls actually meant to be Titans? The way that it's worded seems to suggest that they would guide Azeroth to become a Titan. And this is rather alarming, right? Because Azeroth is existing in her own kind of form for whatever reason, right? Naturally occurring, presumably. And they want to mold her and shape her into one of them. That's a little bit alarming, of course. They eventually sense this presence stirring within the world that we are in, Azeroth, and they made their way to this nascent world soul, hoping that their search was at an end. Now, at the end of all of these discs, I am going to put a part where I read the actual first 2 pages of Chronicle Volume 1, where it discusses the mythos and the awakening of the Titans, so that we have that to contrast against what's told to us here. Because one of those things, Chronicle, of course, is written from mythology, from the perspective of the Titan-forged races of the world. This is information being conveyed directly from Khaz'goroth himself to Arcadis. Now, Brinth and Dagran aren't really sure what to make of this initially. Of course, Dagran is pretty surprised that there is a world soul in our planet. It's not widely known information, believe it or not. And so he proposes that perhaps this is what Magni had been hearing all those years when he was a speaker, when he bound himself to Azeroth using what appeared to be some kind of secret titanic ritual down in Old Ironforge. Brinth remarks that these sound like the personal records from Arcadis regarding maybe everything, and how many more could there be? So week to week, it was very exciting to discover these. Now, at this point, Brinth has no reason to suspect any wrongdoing on behalf of the Titans. So she says that she's not sure what the significance of this is for her people or their purpose, but she does have faith in the Titans' plans. At least that's how it starts.
On Azeroth, the Pantheon sensed a powerful source of corruption. To protect the World Soul, they sent us, the Keepers, to lead the Titan-forged forces into battle. In time, we rooted out and defeated the threat, imprisoning its last vestiges in the deep places of the world. Then, led by Aman'Thul himself, the Titans set towards studying the soul of Azeroth to determine whether it truly was the one they sought. To aid the Titans, we Keepers were tasked with engineering the Manifold, a vast world-spanning complex of machines, forges, and installations. Working in tandem, they would bring order to Azeroth and create a means by which the Pantheon could examine the world's soul in depth.
That corruption the Keeper's talking about, that's the old gods. That must be why they were here as well, for the power of the world's soul. Though I've also read that while the Titans defeated the old gods, they tore a wound in the world. Always thought that was just a metaphor.
It seems clear now that Azeroth must be the prime world soul. That would explain why the Void, the Titans, the Legion, every cosmological force have sought to control it or destroy it over the eons.
What do you suppose the Titans needed to study about it?
We cannot possibly understand the intricacies of the Titans' reasons, but that complex Arcadus mentioned, I believe I know what that is about.
Now, in the next portion here, this is where the perspective of the Titans, and perspective in general, really comes into play. On Azeroth, the Pantheon sensed a source of powerful corruption. So this is the old gods, presumably. To protect the world soul, the Titans sent in the Keepers, right? So Odin, Freya, Thorim, obviously Arcadus, the list goes on and on. There are quite a few Keepers, Ra, among others, to basically take the Titan-forged races and go and destroy the old gods. In time, when these events are mentioned in Chronicle, of course, the Wrath of the Titan-forged, they rooted out and defeated the threat, because the old gods were so ingrained down into Azeroth, according to Chronicle, that instead of ripping them out forcefully, like what Aman'Thul is alleged to have done, which is quite reckless and strange behavior for a god of time, but also a god very much associated in many ways with Zeus, who was kind of a dick, kind of a strange decision to make. So they rip Y'Shaarj out. This causes irreparable damage, a gaping wound in the world, which would later become the Well of Eternity. Now, in some in-game books and perspectives, it's actually positioned as though the Titans did this on purpose and crafted it on purpose. Neltharion's annotated version of the Old Gods in the Ordering of Azeroth makes a remark about this, how the Titans' hubris and arrogance, of course they would claim that their reckless actions were, it was intentional. They did this on purpose. So anyway, they root out and defeat the threat, imprisoning its last vestiges in the deep places of the world. So the Black Empire. They were imprisoned underground. With the exception of course, N'Zoth, which I will talk about more in the future, but I already have videos discussing that he was not, in fact, buried underneath ground. He was, as I believe the hints indicate, actually imprisoned inside the Well of Eternity. But, moving on, led by Aman'Thul himself, the Titans set towards studying the soul of Azeroth to determine whether it truly was the one that they sought. Now, I wonder what about it would have given the indication that it was the prime world soul, and this is something that Dagran also contemplates. To aid the Titans, the Keepers were tasked with engineering something called the Manifold, a vast world-spanning complex of machines, forges, and installations. But I would also be willing to wager that there are some things that the Titans did not build. If we refer to the Edicts of the Prime Designate, 762, by Keeper Odin, who was originally the Prime Designate before Loken made himself the Prime Designate, Odin pretty much writes in there that they were going to lie about the Black Empire. They were going to lie about the technological advancements, and all works of wonder were going to be attributed to the Titans alone. So they were literally lying about the things that they had built. I would be willing to bet that the most sore thumb that sticks out as something that the Titans did not truly build, but took and probably repurposed for their own agenda, would be the Halls of Origination, the Forge of Origination found in Uldum. The reason why I believe this is pretty simple. To me, especially, some of the things inside the facility do not look that titanic. And if you look at the architecture found in Uldum, especially that of like the obelisks and things floating around, it looks just like Black Empire stuff. Now, of course, Black Empire architecture is more Akkadian Empire, more Sumerian kind of inspired, right? But Uldum is more Egypt, of course, with the pyramids and whatnot, but the architectural motifs are definitely still there. Runes and things scrawled on the floor and the walls, the obelisks floating around, and I don't really think that it's any measure of a surprising event that N'Zoth's invasion, one of the invasion points is Uldum, and if you guys remember back to the BFA storyline and questline, N'Zoth somehow knew how to work the Forge of Origination. I'm almost certain that this hallway in Nyalotha is literally modeled off of the Grand Gallery from the actual pyramids of Giza. And if that's the case, then the connection from Sumerian to Egyptian is extremely obvious. Then you've got the denizens of Uldum, the alleged Titan-forged race we know as the Tol'vir, who also show up in archaeological items, suggesting that they were actually part of the ancient empire of Ajakir. So that's pretty interesting. They also try to claim that Ankaraj is a Titan research facility, and that was architected by the Titans, but I think that's extremely fucking hard to believe, especially when you look at the architectural style present there. If anything, it looks more like they tried to cover this shit up. But I digress. They try to say that they built this world-spanning complex of machines, forges, and installations. And again, through the BFA storyline, we learn that there are connections between things like the engine of Nalak Shah, which is in Kunlai Summit in the mountains up there in the Mogushan Vaults, and that can actually connect over to the Forge of Origination, and the Heart Chamber can all be connected to that as well. Now, one little aside is that it's revealed to us also in BFA that the make and construction of the Heart Chamber, very similar to the Vault of Memory here in Khaz Algar, is that of Arcadis, and that Keeper Ra, who was the High Keeper, one of the Keepers of Aman'Thul, did not know about the construction of that chamber. So we already have some information here that some of these Keepers were keeping information from one another, that they were building things that others did not know about. That's very crucial in beginning to understand the dynamic between the Keepers and perhaps even the Titans themselves. But working in tandem, these machines and installations, the Forge of Wills included, would bring order to Azeroth, create a means by which the Pantheon could examine the world soul in depth, which again, that sounds really sketchy. I don't know that I really believe that. As Dagrin recognizes, the corruption that the Keepers are referring to is the Old Gods. So that must be why they were here as well, for the power of the world soul. That's what he surmises, but he could very well be wrong. The Old Gods could be here for a completely different reason. They could have been manifest from Azeroth's dreams and or nightmares, completely separate and not necessarily after the world soul at all. In fact, they could have even been trying to protect it. The Xal'atath lore-walking questline, where we see the 4 Old Gods unite against Xal'atath because they are intending to protect the world and help it grow into something more powerful, could be indicative of this kind of intent by them. Now, Dagrin also read that while the Titans had defeated the Old Gods, they tore a wound in the world, and he always thought that was just a metaphor. But what we're told in Chronicle anyway, is that the forceful removal of Yasharaj is what causes this wound in the world. It's also been revealed to us recently through interviews and midnight information that the Rift of Aln is a wound. So keep that in mind. Chronicle Volume 1 also says a very important thing, and this is a huge misconception commonly spread about the Old Gods and the Titans, is that the Titans could not kill the Old Gods. Well, no, that's actually not what Chronicle says. Chronicle says that the Old Gods could not be killed in this manner, and the manner which they're referring to is forcefully ripping them out. This is allegedly why they decided to imprison the Old Gods, basically sedate them, and put them in enchanted monolithic prisons from which they could not escape. Brinth agrees and says it seems clear now that Azeroth must be the Prime World Soul. That would explain why the Void, the Titans, the Legion, every cosmological force have sought to control it or destroy it over the eons. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy there, because you might be able to do a lot more for your cosmological force by controlling Azeroth, which is, I'm sure, what the Titans would like to do, than you would by destroying it. Maybe it's an ideology of like, if we destroy it, then no one else can use it and the universe will be better off kind of situation. And I assume that the destruction of it that she's referring to is probably the Legion. It is interesting though, because at least again, in an interpreted book in the Tome of Blighted Implements for the Warlock artifact weapons from Legion, it is said anyway, we don't know this for sure, that when the Well of Eternity collapsed around Sargeras, he was kind of shot back through to the Twisting Nether, but during that event, he fell through the center of Azeroth and saw Azeroth's eye gazing at him, and he became enraptured by it. So how literal that is, we can't really know. That's not like a first-hand account from Sargeras, so like, I'm not sure how we really know that. And I would take that with a grain of salt in terms of how literal that should be interpreted. But Brinth concurs that this must be the Prime World Soul. And Dagrin raises the question, what is it that they needed to study about it? That's a really good question. Brinth, of course, comes back with, we can't possibly understand the intricacies of the Titans' reasons, which I feel like that falls in line with kind of the attitude that the Titans have often given the mortals, that like their minds are destined to be small and incapable of like complex thought, right? This is definitely how Odin thought about us, and he writes about it as well, kind of a little bit of self-exposing there, so not a good look. But Brinth does know about the complex, the manifold that Arcadis mentioned, and she believes she knows what it's about. Now, if we just simply look at the definition for the word manifold, the first definition adjective is many and various. The implications of this decision were manifold, so very similar to myriad, having many different forms or elements, but I think more so it's more of a mechanical term, right? More like a noun. So a pipe or chamber branching into several openings, something that would be installed that would connect a bunch of different things together. In mathematics, it's also regarded as a collection of points forming a certain kind of set. Manifold to me, I would take much more as like a mechanical term, especially since it's coming from the perspective of the Titan Forged.
At the Titan's command, we keepers began the acclamation. Each installation, all linked to the manifold, produced vast numbers of Titan-forged workers. We fired the great forges to fuel the acclamation and empower the manifold to heal the ravaged world. Then began construction of the Coreway, a direct channel to the heart of Azeroth that would allow the Titans to study the world's soul without harming it. However, as we delved deeper, we encountered certain obstacles, colossal crystals, which we came to realize were calcified chunks of the world's soul's essence. They are of great power, and I wonder how many yet remain undiscovered beneath the earth, all over the world. By word of the great Khaz, the Titan's research has revealed that Azeroth's world soul is indeed the Prime. Our purpose may yet be fulfilled.
Enormous, powerful chunks of world soul essence. Do you think Beladar and Halifal could be one of them?
Potentially. But it was never within the scope of our edicts to study the crystal.
He mentions the Titan Forge making the Coreway. Did you know it was built to study the world soul?
We were created for the great purpose of serving the Titans, and thus we built it. Its purpose was irrelevant to us. We fulfilled our edicts dependably, and we have strived to do so throughout the millennia, despite Khaz Algar facing many setbacks.
Setbacks? What do you mean?
Long ago, the continents of the world split apart, and the machinery that powered our facility was damaged, cut off from the manifold. We were unable to repair the connection. We operated on auxiliary power for a time, but eventually it ran out, and we fell into disarray.
That must have been the Sundering. It's miraculous that any of this survived intact.
Disc number 3 is interesting because of what they choose to show. At the Titan's command, the Keepers began the acclamation. So things becoming acclimated to one another. It's a very strange term, in my opinion, to use, because if you were truly the forgers of all of these things, as Chronicle states, with the Forge of Wills and the Forge of Origination and all this, the term acclamation is just very strange. Like, there shouldn't really be an acclamation. Like, they should all just work together. Like, you're the architect that built them. They should all just kind of work. Each installation, all linked to the manifold, produced vast numbers of Titan Forge workers. Now, this is another instance where they show architecture from Uldum and earthen coming out of it, but as far as we know, there were no earthen produced in Uldum. That's where the Tol'vir were alleged to have been crafted. So a little bit confusing there in terms of why they would do that. So maybe this is something that Arcadis thought was true and wasn't. They fired the Great Forges, so large forges that would basically serve as like engines to power the manifold, that would fuel the acclamation and empower it to heal the ravaged world. So they're healing the world with big machines, is basically what they're saying. I don't really think this is true. I think more so what they're doing is they're ordering it. And again, if you refer to Chronicle Volume 1, the description of what the Forge of Wills can actually do, it says that it can actually shape the sentience of Azeroth, which is like, that's not cool. It can also draw upon the essence of Azeroth to craft Titanforged, and we wonder where the flesh came from. They said it was Yogg-Saron, and it may well have been, but I'm not so sure about that. Then, they began the construction of something called the Coreway. This is obviously the big tube that we see in Khaz Algar, which for the record has not been fully excavated since it's been damaged, so there is a deeper place that we can go down in the Coreway. What we have seen is not the entire picture. You can actually learn from the oral history of the Earthen that the original Thragar were drawn by a song, a sound deep, deep, deep down within the Coreway, but on their way there, they were actually distracted and kind of taken to this other area by this other sound that they were hearing, and that is where they actually found Beledar. So, brings into question what exactly Beledar is, and is it actually just repeating Azeroth's song? What exactly is going on here? But this Coreway would serve as a direct channel to the heart of Azeroth, which we obviously haven't seen yet. I would very much assume that we will come back to this later in the World Soul saga. This would allow the Titans to study the World Soul without harming it. It's just, this is just very strange and kind of worded conveniently to make it seem like the Titans are trying to do a good thing. But basically, I don't understand what exactly is it they need to study to figure out if it is the one, and how their other methods of study that didn't include something like the Coreway could have harmed it. Because yet another thing that you learn in Chronicle is that Agramar and Sargeras directly are able to hear the dreams of slumbering world souls. So when we compare this to what I will read to you in a little bit, the methods by which the Titans would ascertain whether or not a world soul was present inside of a planet, it doesn't really make sense. They use machines to figure it out, when they also propose in Chronicle that they have other methods by which they can make this determination. So very, very, very strange. However, as the Titanforged delved deeper, including Arcadis, they encountered certain obstacles, like Beledar. Now, for those that don't know, we have actually already discovered another Beledar. It's called Lorendel, or Himosul, and it was the main story content of the Siren's Isle. It is a completely different crystal from Beledar. It is not the same one, and just like Beledar with Anduin's comments about it being similar to Azerite, Lorendel is also not Azerite, which is made evidently clear by collecting the journals and logs from people who have spent time on the island and made the comparison. It is not Azerite, it is something else. Now, the Titanforge do believe that they are calcified chunks of the world soul's essence, which could very well be true. But I want you to think about Azeroth as a great light, almost like a white light, and perhaps the manifold and these facilities and things as a means by which they would split that light into different aspects, right? With holy light, things like the Naru being but one of those aspects. So it is possible that it is a calcified chunk of the world soul essence, but keep in mind as well that from concept art showing Hollowfall itself, this is official Blizzard art, the crystal that is known as Beledar is actually labeled Naru crystal. So we'll have to see what that means. There, to me, seems to be this inherent instability with Beledar where it can shift to void and back and forth, which to me just, again, harkens back to the things like the Murmuration Paradox and Palatar's Codex, which say that individual powers and forces are unstable, and so they tend to bind to one or more secondary elements and powers in order to maintain stability. So I guess in my head, even if this was the essence of Azeroth herself broken and stored in crystals or something, that it might be kind of singular in aspect and thus unstable, likely to shift or fall into lower energy states. Whereas if you were to bind it with an additional power, say the giant sword of Sargeras, which did lead to the blue and gold azurite that we are most familiar with, which is still strictly different from the powers of these great crystals, maybe that's a more stable kind of concoction. Keep in mind that exposure to these crystals does give you a certain type of mentality and inspiration. This was not only indicated from the Priory of the Sacred Flame and how zealous those Arathi became, but also, yet again on Siren's Isle, for the people that were exposed to it, they wanted to make creative, kind of peaceful implements. They didn't want to make any implements of war. Whereas with Azurite, it kind of led to both. Like, kind of either thing were possible, so multi-aspected. Yet again, more information that leads me to believe that while these could very well be calcified chunks of the World Soul Essence, they are most certainly not Azurite, and that there was an additional thing added to Azurite that made it more stable. For those that don't know, we actually do learn back in BFA that the goblins did discover Azurite back during the Cataclysm, but when they found it as a vein of just golden liquid. There was no blue, there was no white, there was no additional aspects of it. So when Gallywix fashioned his cane topper out of it, it actually hardened into this like amberish red material. And then when Sargeras stabbed the world, his cane topper changed into this blue and gold aspect, and that's what Azurite began looking like at that point. So something to do with the sword, which I have a whole video about, you should watch. It's called Azurite, the Blood of Two Titans, could explain what is going on there. These crystals are allegedly of great power, and Arcadis wonders how many yet remain undiscovered beneath the earth all over the world. Now, they do show Belladar as one. We have already discovered another one, Lorendel. So that makes two, and they actually show, besides Belladar in the middle, they show three smaller ones, and who knows that they're actually smaller or not, floating around Belladar. So presumably one of those is Lorendel, but the scans of Lorendel indicate that it goes way down beneath the earth, like it is very big. So it's presumably not much smaller than Belladar, if smaller at all. So I want you to just keep this in mind, that like Arcadis and the Titan Forge could be wrong. Like, they could think that this is the calcified chunks of Azeroth when it isn't. They could totally be wrong about that. And in my opinion, one of the most fun things, considering the fact that Belladar can teleport the Arathi spontaneously down into Hollowfall and can teleport you if you try flying at it, it makes me wonder if Belladar itself was spontaneously teleported, like a mage blinking into a wall, and that's why it's like lodged in the top of this great cavernous ceiling. Because if that were the case, man, I could spin some crazy theories on it being like a primordial Naru ship or something along those lines. I do think that we are going to come back to these crystals during the World Soul Saga and learn more about them. So don't assume that they're just some like Blizzard forgot. Like, no, I really don't think that's the case. We should be at minimum finding at least two more of these. If I had to wager a guess of where they could be, there could be one underneath Quel'Thalas. There could be one under Sholazar Basin. There could be one underneath like the Veil of Eternal Blossoms deep down. Places where life has sprang forth in rapid ways, I think are highly likely to be storing these crystals. Now, Arcadis finishes by saying, by the word of the great Khazgaroth, the Titan's research has revealed that Azeroth's world soul is indeed the prime, and our purpose may yet be fulfilled. So what exactly they were going to do with her world soul, we still don't exactly have the answers to. Now, Dagran and Brinth, of course, have their commentary on this. Dagran remarking, these enormous, powerful chunks of World Soul Essence. Do you think Belladar and Hollowfall could be one of them? Probably. Brinth says potentially, but it was never really within the scope of the edicts that were given to them by the Titans to study the crystal. It's almost like the Titans didn't want them fucking with it. And after the Thragar were drawn to it, we're going to learn more about the Thragar here soon, but that could be a direct reason as to why. In the oral history of the Earthen, it's revealed to us that Belladar, when the Earthen found it, which would have been far before the Arathi ever arrived, it was in a darkened state. And we know this because it says as they drew closer to the sound, the canyon walls darkened. So Belladar was not light. This is an important thing to know because the Arathi believe that Belladar has always been light, and it only started shifting to darkness after the Sword of Stargaris was stabbed into the planet. But this is not the case. In fact, when the Earthen found the crystal originally, when the Thragar did, they actually found Nerubians down there. So, like, the mural on the wall down in the Transformatorium or Transformium, whatever the fuck it's called, in Aj-Kahet, that has the old god and then the crystal right there, and the old god has like gold and like orange eyes, and the crystal is like purple in the middle and has like this gilded like adornment set on it. That is potentially, quite literally, how it used to look. So the Arathi are very much mistaken. We have two actually different sources of historical accounts that do not corroborate what the Arathi lead us to believe about Beledar. So I do believe that they're very much wrong. Dagrin remarks that Arcadis mentions that the Titan Forge made the Coreway, but did they know why they were building the Coreway, or that it was being used to study the World Soul? High Speaker Brinth, and this just really goes to show how, like, the Titans don't really give a fuck about informing their servants why they're actually doing what they're doing. She says that we were created for the purpose of serving the Titans, so we built it. The purpose was irrelevant to us. We're basically just, like, commanded to do it, and so we did it. We fulfilled our edicts dependably. We did our job, right? She's still trying to, like, hold on to this relationship between them. This is a good thing. We just did what they told us to. Like, it's not a big deal. And we have strived to continue fulfilling our edicts throughout the millennia, despite Khaz Algar facing many setbacks. Dagrin questions, of course, what setbacks are that? And Brinth remarks, long ago, during the Sundering, the machinery, the forges that powered the facility that is Khaz Algar and everything beneath it were damaged. It was cut off from the manifold, so it severed that connection. And they were unable to repair that connection, which is why they started losing their memories and going into stasis lock, which is a fucking horrible thing. So similar to dementia. I mean, if you guys remember the quest lines from the Isle of Dorn about it, it is just heart-wrenching what these Earthen went through. So they operated on auxiliary power for a time, but eventually it ran out and they fell into disarray. And Dagrin astutely recognizes that that must have been the Sundering, and that it's kind of miraculous that any of this stuff survived, this vault of memories, which is so similar to the Heart Chamber. So it makes you wonder, like, is this place built more solidly? It is definitely a little bit of a different architectural style, has different motifs, much more Greek and Roman when compared to what we see on the surface in Khaz Algar. So perhaps its method of construction made it significantly more durable to some regard, and maybe there's a similarity there with the Heart Chamber, which somehow managed to withstand the impact of Sargeras' sword, which is pretty mind-blowing. So disc number 3, things are starting to heat up just a little bit. They're still kind of like given the hints of like, this is what we discovered, this is what we did, this is what we were told, and we haven't really got to the juicy stuff yet, so let's get into that.
The great Khazgaroth revealed to me that the corrupting influence of the imprisoned old gods was affecting the World Soul. To protect it, we had the Earthen construct the World Core, a vast chamber at the heart of the world. There, the World Soul will slumber, with only the Titans to influence it. I must note a disturbing development. As they worked to greater depths, some Earthen began to behave erratically. This could not be countenanced. Most units were repaired and continued their work, but some began to physically change and crystallize. They named themselves Thragar. These faulty units were so greatly affected that they rebelled against us, attacking and damaging the World Core. In the course of studying them, it was determined that long exposure to the World Soul's energies led to the changes exhibited in their core directives. If we cannot prevent this from happening, it will prove catastrophic to not only the World Core, but to the Manifold itself. Measures must be taken.
I do not recall this happening. That should not be. This World Core seems as if it was a monumental undertaking. And the Earthen malfunctioning? How would the World Soul's energy cause that? This is very confusing.
By the way, what does he mean by repaired?
Unclear. But what he said about the Thragar rebelling is most disturbing.
The Thragar? That's what they called Granda when he first got to Khaz Algar.
We regard them as legendary champions, almost demigods. To learn that their directives were just corrupted? That they were anomalies? Was everything we believed mistaken? Or even a lie?
Wait. You don't suppose... If the Earthen were affected by the World Soul's radiation, the closer they got to it, could it be that it was actually trying to reach your people? Asking for help, like it did with my Granda, and undoing their directives? Was it actually giving them free will?
I do not know.
So the first thing that Arcadis says in Disc 4 is that the great Khazgaroth revealed to me that the corrupting influence of the imprisoned old gods was affecting the world soul. I think that Khazgaroth and Arcadis here are wrong. I think, and I could be wrong about this of course as well, because I am just a guy with a perspective too. I think it was the other way around. I think that the corrupting influence of the world soul was actually more affecting the old gods and potentially even freeing them from their prisons, giving them more free will, doing something of this nature, because it's not exactly made clear what the effect of the old gods on the world soul even is. And let's just be honest, man, way before the Titans ever even showed up, the old gods had a they had a shitload of time to corrupt the world soul, do whatever they want to it, and they didn't. So why were they unsuccessful in doing so? It makes me wonder, was their intention ever to corrupt it, or is that just the perspective of the Titanforged and the perspective of the Titans, right? What are they actually doing to it, if anything? But in order to protect it, the Earthen had to construct the World Core. So this is not something that Arcadis himself built, but they had the Earthen do it. A vast chamber at the heart of the world. There, the world soul will slumber with only the Titans to influence it. So now, you can kind of see more where this is going. We want to lock her in a stasis chamber, is what it sounds like to me, a dream chamber, where, you know, whether or not she's supposed to wake up or not is definitely up for discussion, but she won't be affected by anything else. Only we, because we obviously know what the right thing to do is, only we will be able to affect the world soul. Only the Titans. Fuck me. And you might have noticed that the world core design seems to have 5 layers, 5 rings to it, which I think that it's really hard to look at something like that without, of course, thinking about the old god whispers that pertain to the number 5. 5 keys to open our way, 5 torches to light our path, 5 lanterns now darkened. The flame they seek shall light the master's way. It's this in conjunction with what I'm going to show you regarding the potential that N'Zoth is related to the World Core, I just think is a super interesting thing to get into. I must note a disturbing development, Arcadis says. As they worked to greater depth, some Earthen began to behave erratically. This could not be countenanced, could not be accepted, it had to be dealt with. Most of these units were repaired, whatever the fuck that means, and continued their work, but some began to physically change and crystallize, as shown in the images in the cutscene. They named themselves Thragar, which we don't exactly know the meaning to, as I understand it so far, but I would love to know exactly what that means. These faulty units were so greatly affected that they rebelled against the Titanforged, attacking and damaging the World Core, as if the World Core had become looked at by the World Soul of Azeroth and by these Thragar as some kind of prison or something to break free from. This influence basically broke the Thragar from their directives and made them rebel. In the course of studying these Thragar, it was determined that long exposure to the World Soul's energies led to the changes exhibited in their core directives. When I first heard this, I lost my shit, because what this is the same thing we see at the end of the Ringing Deeps questline, where Azeroth's power literally gives the Earthen free will, which, if you're familiar with the Silmarillion and the stories of Tolkien's works, Aule, which is basically our Khazgaroth, very similar to Greek Hephaestus as well, the original creator of the dwarves, he creates dwarves, but they don't really have sentience and free will. This is something that Eru Iluvatar discovers and is like, bro, you're fucking my plans up. Why are you doing this? Why are you making things without, like, my permission or, you know, not in accordance with the plan? And Aule's like, well, I only did this because the powers that you, Eru Iluvatar, who's basically God, Azeroth, gave me, so, you know, like, here they are. And Eru Iluvatar basically contemplates this and then is like, you know what? Fine, you can have them, but understand that they don't have any sentience, so I'm going to give unto them flesh and free will and this sentience, but they cannot awaken and come into the world until the proper time, because I don't want your creations, which are deserving of Genesis in their own right, I don't want them affecting the plan as I have it laid out thus far. Now, they will serve their purpose, but you have to be patient. And Aule is like, okay, fine. And Aule is a pretty chill guy, so I really hope that Khaz is a pretty chill guy too. But it's funny because Eru Iluvatar imparts to them this free will, this sentience, and that is exactly what we witness Azeroth do to the Earthen in the War Within. So big hints, not only through the Prime World Soul, but through this story in the Ringing Deeps, what Azeroth actually is and what power she actually gives and what she symbolizes, right? But Arcadis says, if we cannot prevent this from happening, the Thragar from rising, because of the influence of the World Soul, it will prove catastrophic to not only the World Core, but to the Manifold itself. Measures must be taken. Because the Thragar, acting in service presumably to Azeroth, were going to basically dismantle the Manifold in the World Core. Because Azeroth, I think at this point, evidently wants out of whatever the fuck this thing that has been built is. Now this is where things get very interesting, especially with the most recent Xal'atath lore-walking information, where we learned that N'Zoth was building something, but it's not made explicitly clear what he was building.
N'Zoth should have known Xal'atath would target Ny'alotha when she learned what he was building. Fortunately, our aid will leave him in our debt.
High Speaker Brinth says, I do not recall this happening. That should not be. This world core seems as if it was a monumental undertaking. And the Earthen malfunctioning? How would the World Soul's energy cause that? This is very confusing. Now, Daggerin starts to put the pieces together of what this means, but we do have a storyline where some of the memories of the Earthen were being erased intentionally so that they wouldn't remember the rebellion of the Thragar, right? We're going to learn more about that coming up. But she doesn't remember the construction of the World Core at all, right? This sounds like it was a monumental undertaking, yet she's not familiar with that whatsoever. Makes me wonder if it is possible that the Titan Forged did not build the World Core. I can't wait to see it, because, as I mentioned, Xal'atath goes after N'Zoth and the Black Empire because she found out what he was building. Quite interesting, because Xal'atath clearly wants the World Soul for herself. So, if N'Zoth and his Black Empire united unanimously under his rule were to build something like the World Core, holy shit, what a twist that would be. That it was already built, and it's another thing that the Titans took, that they stole, repurposed perhaps for themselves, where maybe the World Core was meant to harness Azeroth's energy for the creation of life or to bolster the Black Empire, and the Titans basically stole it and used it as a mechanism to order her World Soul. Absolutely fucking horrifying, but crazy to think. And yet again, because Odin literally writes like, yeah, any technological advancements made by the Black Empire are to be purged. Paint that as an age of suffering, pernicious blight that we keepers eradicated. Like, with the old gods locked in confinement, there should be no evidence to disprove that. And remember that nothing actually is created until it's been ordered. So the writing is on the fucking wall there, and it's not just Odin who gives us this information. From Grimoire of the Shadowlands, Talora, who writes that book, literally makes mention of the fact that the Titans have the same word for created as they do for ordered. So very hubristic, very prideful of the Titans to do something like this, but it calls into question, was her memory of the construction of the World Core, and were there memories of that just gone? Were they erased because they didn't want them to find it and maybe become exposed to it and turn into Thragar and rebel again? And maybe both of these things can be true. Or is it because they didn't fucking build it? That would be crazy. I think that would be insane, especially if it is true that the original construction in Uldum is not the hand of the Titans, but in fact the hand of the Black Empire. Dagran immediately goes to the question of, what does he mean by repaired? I think that we all know what that means. Okay? I think that we know what that means, because what did the World Core effectively give the Thragar? Free will. What would it mean to repair that? It would mean to take it away, to order them, to get rid of that which granted them free will, to purge the influence of the world soul. This is why I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination at all to suggest that the Titans are actually the ones behind the power of domination. Because domination is a soul-bending, suppressive control magic. It is literally about commanding someone against their will to do things that they very likely do not want to do. It is very evil, and it's very blue, and it looks very similar to the magic wielded by the Titans on the seat of the Pantheon. The runes on there may be written in the Titanic language, but they're still the right color. I have all sorts of videos on my channel. You should check them out about how I believe the Titans dominated Sargeras. The artwork of Sargeras as an orderly member of the Pantheon sure looks a lot like Zoval, Anduin, Arthas Menethil when they were dominated, and he does appear to be wielding what is, I believe, a Mournblade. So, highly recommend checking that out because I'm quite sure that's what happened. So, repairing them, yeah, I think we know what that means. Brinth says, well, it's unclear, but what he said about the Thragar rebelling is most disturbing. Dagran goes, the Thragar? That's what they called Granda Magni when he first got to Khaz Algar, if you guys remember early on in the campaign. Brinth says, we regard them as legendary champions. They're like heroes of our people, almost demigods. But to learn that their directives were just corrupted, that they were anomalies? Was everything we believed mistaken or even a lie? Brinth is basically having to face the fact right at that moment that, like, oh my god, what actually happened to these things and what we were given in terms of memory regarding them, these two things cannot be reconciled. This, is it just a mistake or were we manipulated? It's incredibly fucked up, this realization of what has been done to them. Dagran says, wait, you don't suppose that the Earthen were affected by the World Soul's radiation the closer they got to it? Could it be that the World Soul was actually trying to reach out to you guys and, like it did with Magni? And undoing their directives, was it actually giving them free will? The answer to that question, it is yes. That is what was happening. And Brinth says, I don't know. But we got one more disc left, and this is where shit hits the fan.
With the danger posed by the rogue Thragar, the great Amon Thul ordered the rebellion to be quelled, and the Thragar hunted down until the threat was neutralized. However, the issue of Earthen malfunction under the influence of the World Soul's energies remained, and so a new solution was devised. The Earthen of Khaz Algar will relinquish their memories into an archive to preserve recorded data and purge the influence of the World Soul's energies. By initiating this protocol on a regular cadence, we will ensure the Thragar malfunction does not take hold again. To secure compliance, the Titans have programmed edicts into the operational Earthen to regulate and enforce their discrete functions and efficiency. Thus, the Earthen will maintain the integrity of the Coreway and the machines of Khaz Algar. Should the edicts be broken, more permanent failsafes have been set into place. With these difficulties behind them, the Titans have declared that the World Soul remains, dreaming, safely contained within the World Core, where no harm will come to it. I do not know why I commit this information to the archive, why I risk its discovery in the future. Perhaps the World Soul's influence does not extend solely to the earthen.
What we've learned here, it calls the entire history of Azeroth into question. What if our history isn't what they said it was?
So the Keepers stole our memories and let us believe that it was for our own good? That it was so we could continue to fulfill our purpose? No, not even our purpose. We built the greatest structures the world has ever seen, and they set us to become maintenance drones. Just cogs in a machine.
And it does seem that they did it to keep you complacent, obedient, following their edicts, and eliminating those of you they couldn't control.
Those edicts. They were bonds of servitude, and we never even knew. And then when the sundering happened, we were cut off from all of it. And Arcadis never returned to help us. Why didn't he return? Our entire history, our culture, held in that archive. I want my memories back. I want all our memories back. Damn the Titans.
I'm starting to think there's more to the World Soul than the Titans wanted us to know. That they had other plans for it, and Azeroth, than we were led to believe. What if all of us, even Arcadis himself, have been deceived?
Arcadis says, with the danger posed by the rogue Thragar, the great Thul ordered the rebellion to be quelled, and the Thragar hunted down until the threat was neutralized. So they couldn't control them, so they would just eradicate them. No questions asked. Now, is Thul the big bad guy? I don't want to believe it. It's very possible and very likely, but I think that the most machine-coded, most Morgoth, domination machine god of all of the Titans is Norganon. The guy specializes in command magic. The trinket that drops from Argus the Unmaker from Legion literally says that Norganon's prowess is command, making you do something, giving commands, right? Giving the codes. When you look at the keepers of Norganon, like Loken, he is willing to rewrite history in Ulduar. I would surmise that Norganon has probably done the very same thing, probably to make Thul look as bad as he possibly can. This could include ripping out things like Yasharaj, Ilunahir, who knows if these things are actually true, and that he is most likely the one that is most directly connected with domination itself. Actual command, soul-bending magic. He gives me Kel'Thuzad vibes to a degree, where he kind of betrays the Council of the Six, gets into necromancy and dark magics that he's not supposed to be fucking with, and becomes a severe problem. So I don't know if Thul's really the big bad guy, but at any rate, it's alleged that he ordered the rebellion to be quelled and the Thragar hunted down. However, the issue of earthen malfunction under the influence of the World Soul's energies was a constant issue, and so a new solution was needed. The Earthen of Khaz Algar will relinquish their memories, so this was something that at the time of recording this had not yet been done. They would relinquish their memories to the archive to preserve recorded data and purge the influence of the World Soul's energies. They purged their free will out of them. They ordered the free will out of them. By initiating this protocol on a regular cadence, we will ensure the Thragar malfunction does not happen again. To ensure and secure compliance, the Titans have programmed edicts into the operational Earthen to regulate and enforce their discrete functions and efficiency. So we're basically going to wipe your memories. We're going to install directives that you do not stray from. You do not have free will. This will not happen. This cannot be countenanced. And by initiating this protocol on a regular basis, going back to the Awakening Machine and going through this process again, having their memories wiped, it will ensure the Thragar malfunction doesn't happen. It is immensely fucked up. memory erasure, basically quelling the rebellion when it's very likely that what the Titans were doing was not benevolent in the first place. If these Thragar were acting on behalf of Azeroth, she clearly does not like what they're doing to her. And it brings into question, like, what the fuck have we done in the past? If you guys remember the Whispers of a Frightened World quest leading into Legion, Azeroth is having nightmares and beginning to wake up, and her nightmares are manifesting, and we go in and destroy them, and she goes back to sleep nice and easy, no problem. Like, are we the fucking baddies? Like, it's something that we don't know, so, like, we can't... Is it really our fault? Not really, but, like, we're still the ones doing the action, so, like, this is a horrible, horrible fucking thing that's going on, and we have taken part in it. By doing so, the Earthen will maintain the integrity of the Coreway and the machines of Khaz Algar. Should the edicts be broken, more permanent failsafes have been set into place, and you guys all saw what that was when you finished the main story of the base 11.0 questline. There were giant fucking exterminator robots that came out from the ocean and sought to destroy us. Like, that's it. Like, period. That's what they were. The Earthen swayed again from the exact designation that they were given, so the Titans basically sick their big robot exterminating things on us, and it's just, it's horrific. With these difficulties behind them, the Titans have declared that the world soul remains dreaming, safely contained within the world core, where no harm will come to it. I really have to wonder, did they really do this because of the old gods? Is this something about this does not feel right? They were looking for Azeroth for a reason. And what exactly they intended to do with her, we do not know, and we should be highly fucking suspicious of their motivations. As I have always been. The Titans have always given sketchy-ass vibes, and I'll show you a laundry list of things after this that also prove it. Arcadis finishes with this. I do not know why I commit this information to the archive, why I risk its discovery in the future. Perhaps the World Soul's influence does not extend solely to the Earthen, which is directly implying, of course, that Arcadis was granted a measure of free will. He felt that he needed to commit this to memory somewhere, that someone needed to know that this happened, and surely the Titans did not intend originally for Arcadis to act this way. So Arcadis is also at risk, and I think that what we see ultimately in Uldaman suggests this at being repaired, at being wiped, having his memory wiped, and basically being turned back into a machine. And I really think that that's what we encounter in Uldaman. What is good to know, though, is from the book Exploring Azeroth Eastern Kingdoms, when we defeated Arcadis, we apparently didn't, like, kill him, we deactivated him. So just like there was a disc with the memories and everything of Keeper Tyr that was used to bring him back in Dragonflight, perhaps we could do a similar thing with Keeper Arcadis. That would be fucking awesome. I would love to explore more of Uldaman, find out what was down more, in that city. It's a city that goes all under the Badlands. It's massive, and many parts of it are collapsed and inaccessible. I would love to bring him back, and I would love a situation where we get Tyr, where we get Arcadis, and I know he's a dickhead, but maybe if he could cool off and realize his mistakes, even Odin would be kind of sick, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one, because this would be a really cool representation, a downward fractal for Sargeras, for Odin, potentially, even though he's alleged to be Aman'Thul's keeper, which I don't fucking believe, but that's what they say. Arcadis for Khaz'Garoth, and Keeper Tyr for the Titan Agramar, because I think that what they need to do with the Titans is they need to have a more nuanced story. Just having all of the Titans be bad guys, I don't really think that's what's going to happen. I would like to see a story where the Titans were actually betrayed by one of their own, namely Norgannon and or Aman'Thul, who ordered them, realized that maybe even the Titans to some degree had been exposed to this corruption, and then they themselves had gleaned free will to some capacity, and that they too needed to be repaired and reset and kind of made back into machines, which is horrifying. And before I get to the next parts of this, I just want to throw out there, if something can go from being stone to flesh to stone again, as shown with the Neferset, I believe, some of the Tol'vir and Cataclysm, Deathwing helped them do this, or if something can go from stone to flesh or flesh to stone, or something can go from not having free will to having free will to not having free will, you never know the state that something started in. So we don't know with any level of certainty that the Titans did not at some point have free will. I think that there is at least one among them, Sargeras, who has a measure of free will, and that the others consider that a corruption and consider him fallen and darkened and an evil guy. But he may be one of the only ones championing Azeroth herself. But Again, you know, that's wishful thinking, you know, because the guy's alleged to be the leader of the Burning Legion. So all of the evidence points to that at the moment. And so, yeah, Sargeras is probably a bad guy. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't have free will. He just could have used his free will to do the wrong things. So Dagran and Brinth's revelation here is just like, it's mind-boggling for them. Dagran says, what we've learned here, it calls the entire history of Azeroth into question. What if our history isn't what they said it was? And that's a really important thing. In Chronicle Volume 1, something that seemingly I was one of the only people that makes videos ever noticed, Chris Metzen repeatedly says that the things in Chronicle are a history. There's even a part where it is written, even in the face of all this ... italicized history ... I'm sure the adventure is just beginning. He was heavily emphasizing that it's a history. And you know what they say? History is written by the victors. So how do we know that the history, the historical account of things, are actually true? When we have instances of people like Loken, one of the keepers of Norgannon, literally altering the history of what happened at Ulduar via the Tribunal of Ages. Because Arcadis and Ironia and Tyr stole the discs of Norgannon and fled south toward Uldaman, and Loken basically panicked and was like, oh fuck, I have to rewrite this so that it makes this look in a different way so that, that they don't know the truth. So what is the likeliness that someone like Norgannon would do that as well? Just something that needs to be considered. Now, people will often say like, oh, this is a retcon. I can't believe they retcon to make the Titans bad. After all of this, I'm going to show you the speech from Algalon from Ulduar. I'm going to show you the speech from Ronan, and I'm going to show you a couple other things that make it pretty clear that, like, this is not some new big retcon at all. The Titans have always been portrayed this way. People just sometimes see what they want to see. So, I'm sorry, but it cannot be countenanced that this is looked at as a retcon. It fucking is not. It absolutely is not. There has been tremendous evidence to support this throughout the years, and so no, it is not a retcon. Don't go around saying it's a retcon. So, Brinth remarks, so the Keepers stole our memories and let us believe that it was for our own good? That it was so we could continue to fulfill our purpose? No, not even our purpose. We built the greatest structures the world has ever seen. And that could be because no one has seen the World Core, but again, makes me wonder, did they really build the World Core? And they set us to become maintenance drones. Just cogs in a machine. Nothing more. It does seem like they did it to keep you complacent and obedient, following their edicts and eliminating those of you they couldn't control. Those edicts, Brinth says, they were bonds of servitude, and we never even knew. And then when the Sundering happened, we were cut off from all of it, and Arcadis never returned to help us. Why didn't he return? Well, if you know the story of the Winterscorn War and the Titan Forged, we know why Arcadis didn't come back. Because he and Tyr and Ironia fled south, Loken sent Cathraxi after them, Tyr ended up sacrificing himself, and evidently Arcadis and Ironia end up being locked inside Uldaman. Ironia is literally locked in a room with nothing in it. She's like total robot mode, completely out of the way. If we hadn't opened that chamber, we would have never had to deal with her. She was literally locked in a broom closet, so that's interesting. And then, of course, Arcadis, when we get to him, he's in the presence of the discs of Norgannon, which who knows what effect that could have on people that carry them around. And he appears to be much more like a robot. So we know why they never came back. They were cut off. They were unable to return because they all went to sleep in order to stop from turning to flesh, which didn't work. At least in the case of the Earthen, some of which turned into Trogs, some of which turned into dwarves, but you probably know that story. But I would like to talk more about Uldaman and what is kept in the discs of Norgannon there, because there's been something in the history of the Titans that changed drastically. All is not what it seems, and if you read those discs of Norgannon, you will see it. Trust me. Yeah, highly recommend doing it. Brinth says, our entire history, our culture, held in that archive. I want my memories back. I want all our memories back. And then she hits you with the sickest fucking line, dude. This shit, I couldn't believe it when I saw her say it. She says, damn the Titans. Of course, as you guys heard in the cutscene. So, yeah, dude, what a turnaround. We go from her having faith in the Titans' plans through these weeks of collecting these discs, and eventually she gets to the point where she realizes, holy fuck, we're meaningless to them. They didn't want us to have free will and be our own people. They wanted us to just be subservient, and they didn't give a fuck about anything else. So do you guys really think that the Titans give a fuck about us? About the champions, about the characters? Or are they just using us for their own ends? using us to take out the other cosmic powers that are in contention with them. The Void, Sargeras, and the Legion. And what else are we supposed to do, right? We're gonna go after these forces because they threaten our existence. They threaten our life, of course. So what else are we gonna do? But what happens when they're not a problem anymore because we've cleaned up and taken care of all the problems that the Titans had and all the people that were, going against them? We're gonna have to fight back against them, of course. And I hate to say I told you so, but I fucking told you so. Like, this has absolutely been set up for a very long time. There's even the Stone Watcher of Norganon in southern Tanaris, which was removed back in 403, I think, in Cataclysm. But he literally said to us that our world was scheduled for visitation. It's been rescheduled for visitation. And we're like, excuse me, we are rescheduled for visitation? What the fuck does that mean? And he's like, visitation is a method by which the creators come back to establish control over seeded worlds, and that this is not a tactic to be taken lightly when executed by the creators. So this was always their plan. They just had to reschedule it because of what happened with Sargeras, but they always planned to come back. They've always been several steps ahead. But all of their cosmically calculated bullshit, like Ronan says, and like Algalon alludes to, it does not account for the power of free will. So they will lose. They are going to lose. We will defeat them. Dagran finishes by saying, I'm starting to think there's more to the World Soul than the Titans wanted us to know. Absolutely. That they had other plans for it, and Azeroth, than we were led to believe. What if all of us, even Arcadis himself, have been deceived? And again, I think that is tremendously likely. In short, to summarize all of this, the Titan records of Keeper Arcadis give us a very different look at Azeroth's past. According to him, the Pantheon wasn't just traveling the cosmos at random. They were searching for something specific, the Prime World Soul. The most powerful soul in existence. The one they could guide into becoming the greatest Titan of all. And in time, they found it, here on Azeroth. From that point on, everything the Titans did was about shaping, protecting, and ultimately controlling the Prime World Soul. To achieve this, they didn't just send in a few agents, they unleashed the Keepers, Titan-forged armies, and massive machinery designed to root out the old gods, contain corruption, and build the infrastructure necessary to study the soul of Azeroth itself. This wasn't passive observation, though. They created the Manifold, the Great Forges, the Coreway, and finally, allegedly, the World Core. A sealed chamber where Azeroth's soul would dream under the Titan's influence, cut off from everything else. These systems weren't about preserving the planet as it was. They were about control. Along the way, the Titans discovered calcified crystals like Beladar and Lorendal, literal chunks of Azeroth's essence buried beneath the earth, if what the Titanforge came to believe is true. They also realized that prolonged exposure to the World Soul was changing their own constructs. Some of the Earthen began to shift, rebel, and call themselves Thregar, and what exactly happened to them is not entirely clear, though there is a monument to them in Dornogal that has a bunch of bluish-green crystal, and it makes me wonder if they were reduced down into literal just crystals, and that's the dead Thregar there. Or are we going to find them down in another Titan facility that we have yet to even discover, buried deep under the ground? Because the Titans really do like to bury their secrets. Instead of treating this like evolution, the Titans saw it as a malfunction. They crushed the rebellion and then implemented safeguards, forced memory wipes, obedience protocols called edicts, and hardwired failsafes to keep the Earthen compliant. In short, they erased history and replaced autonomy with servitude. What's clear is that the Titans weren't metal guardians. They were engineers running a project. If something interfered with their design, they corrected it. If a people developed independence, they stripped it away. Even Arcadis' own writings show cracks of doubt, hints that the World Soul itself might have been influencing its caretakers, maybe even trying to grant them free will. And that raises a bigger question. Were the Titans truly protecting Azeroth? Or were they trying to reshape it into something that served them? Because if Azeroth is the Prime World Soul, then every cosmic power we've ever fought, the Void, the Legion, the Old Gods, they were fighting for control of the single most powerful being in existence. The Titans didn't come here to play Guardian. They came here to claim the prize. They built containment chambers, erased memories, and again enforced compliance, all to keep Azeroth's soul under their control until the day it could finally awaken as the Titan they wanted it to be. If that process is ever completed, Azeroth won't just be protected. It'll be remade according to the Pantheon's design, and none of us will have a say in what that looks like. So they must be stopped. The Titans in the ordering of the universe. No one knows when or why the first Titan awoke, but legends hold that his name was Aman'Thul. Though Aman'Thul was alone, he knew in his heart that others of his kind must exist. Thus he explored the worlds of the great dark beyond, intent on finding more Titans. His quest was arduous and lonely, but it was ultimately fulfilling. In time, he discovered other nascent world souls. Aman'Thul lovingly nurtured these newfound kin and roused them from slumber. Those who awakened devoted themselves to his noble search. Aman'Thul and his siblings later became known as the Pantheon. They were benevolent by nature, creatures aligned with order and stability. The Pantheon possessed a natural affinity to the latent magic in the universe. Fully aware of their incredible power, they bound themselves to a code of temperance toward the civilizations they encountered, even those of the unruly elemental spirits. The Titans of the Pantheon came to realize that order was crucial to finding others of their kind. On each world they encountered, they employed techniques to ascertain whether a world soul was present. The Pantheon would first pacify the world's raging elemental populations. Then, they would reshape the world, forming great mountains, fathomless seas, and roiling skies. Lastly, the Titans would seed myriad life forms across the newly ordered world. In doing so, the Pantheon hoped to call forth the world soul and help bring it to maturity. Most of the time, however, these worlds visited by the Titans proved inert. The Pantheon vowed to maintain and protect all of these worlds, even those that did not contain a slumbering spirit. To do so, they empowered primitive life forms to uphold the integrity of their ordered worlds. The Pantheon also embedded colossal machines in the surface of the worlds that they had shaped. Through these devices, the Titans could monitor their worlds and purge them of life should their evolutionary paths succumb to disorder. To aid the Pantheon, Aman'Thul called upon a mysterious race known as the Constellar. These celestial beings observed the many worlds ordered by the Titans, staying vigilant for any sign of instability. When it was necessary, the Constellar could initiate a fail-safe procedure to scour life from a world in the hopes of resetting its evolutionary process. Over the ages, the Pantheon discovered fewer and fewer world souls, yet they remained undaunted. They knew that the universe was vast beyond measure, and even after epochs of exploring the stars, they had only plumbed but a small corner of creation. Unbeknownst to the Titans, malign forces were also hard at work in the distant reaches of the Great Dark.
Your actions are illogical. All possible results for this encounter have been calculated. The Pantheon will receive the Observer's message regardless of outcome. I have seen worlds bathed in the Maker's flames, their denizens fading without so much as a whimper. Entire planetary systems born and raised in the time that it takes your mortal hearts to beat once. Yet all throughout, my own heart devoid of emotion, of empathy, I have felt nothing. A million lives wasted. Had they all held within them your tenacity? Had they all loved life as you do? Perhaps it is your imperfection, that which grants you free will, that allows you to persevere against all cosmically calculated odds. You prevail where the Titan's own perfect creations have failed. I've rearranged the reply code. Your planet will be spared. I cannot be certain of my own calculations anymore. Do not worry about my fate, Bronzen. If the signal is not transmitted in time, reorigination will proceed regardless. Save your world.
Citizens of Dalaran, raise your eyes to the skies and observe. Today our world's destruction has been averted in defiance of our very makers. Algalon, the Observer, Herald of the Titans, has been defeated by our brave comrades in the depths of the Titan city of Ulduar. Algalon was sent here to judge the fate of our world. He found a planet whose races had deviated from the Titans' blueprints. A planet where not everything had gone according to plan. Cold logic deemed our world not worth saving. Cold logic, however, does not account for the power of free will. It's up to each of us to prove this is a world worth saving. That our lives are worth living.
You are known to me, champions of Azeroth. Your deeds have unbalanced the harmony of the cosmos. For reality to endure, it must be remade. But you are nothing more than aberrations to be discarded. All possible outcomes result in your demise. Realities folding upon realities. Through death will come order. Witness the fury of the cosmos. There is no realm in which you can hide. You fail to see what is coming.
So there you have it, the analysis of the Titan discs. I cannot wait to discover more of these Titan facilities, understand how they link together, and try to figure out why in the world on the map of the facilities, one of them appears to be right where Icecrown Citadel is. Of course, it could be the Vault of Archivon. I will admit that. There is a Titan facility there. But is there anything underneath Icecrown Citadel? Is there anything down below that maybe those machines and the Soul Forge and everything there that activated during the Shadowlands cinematic could be connected to? What were the Titans really up to? I can't wait to find out. I hope that you guys enjoyed my analysis of this. I appreciate all the support on the video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you hit like, please make sure you subscribe, and please make sure that you leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you very much. Stay awesome, and until next time, I will see you guys later.